Dad gave me a 2 a.m. curfew. I complied. When I was about 16 or 17, like any other kid at that age, I desperately wanted to go to a party all my friends went to. All of my friends were older than myself, so they had no curfew, or were allowed to stay very late. My dad, however, was a pain in the ass at that time. Or at least, that was my perception. He wouldn't let me go anywhere, and when I was allowed to go, he'd give ridiculous curfews that held no account with the nature of the event. For example, going to the movies at 8, but demanding to be back home at 10. That kinda limits your choices, right? And you don't want to be that friend who puts constraints onto the group. Sorry, I digress. Anyway, that particular day, I negotiated for him to give me a later curfew. After a while, he stated that 2 a.m. was the absolute latest I should be home. That sucked, because most of my friends had a 3 a.m. curfew and the party was at least a half an hour bike ride away. So, this would mean I would miss more than 1 hour 30 minutes of the party. Yeah, severe case of FOMO here. I tried to negotiate some more, but then I realized what date it was. Enter malicious compliance. You see, it was the last weekend of October, on a Saturday. I don't think this is the same everywhere, but in the larger part of Europe this means that daylight savings time ends at exactly 3 a.m. Clocks are set back 1 hour. So I went to the party, not by bike. I asked for a friend to drop me off, making sure that I would be there exactly on time. I made sure that my dad didn't hear me a minute too soon, because then, I would be almost an hour late. At exactly 3 a.m., or better, 2 a.m. for the second time, I opened the door and got in. Needless to say, he was furious, demanding an immediate explanation as to why I was an hour late. When I said I was exactly on time, pointing at his own radio-controlled watch, I could see his face turn all kinds of red, and an awesome mix of defeat and anger in his eyes. He sent me to bed, knowing I was right, and I complied, knowing I was very wrong. Nevertheless, it was an awesome victory. Edit, some context on the curfew. 2 a.m. was definitely a reasonable curfew. Not exceptional though, it's very often something like 1 a.m. for 16-year-olds. 2 a.m. for 17-year-olds. And as of 18 you're legally an adult, so do whatever the hell you want. Judging by most the comments, the curfews mentioned in the story and in my first edit may look ridiculous for the average American. I didn't realize this. But really, these are pretty average for a European country. As for the 18, do whatever the hell you want, this comment obviously applies to curfews. Once you reach the age of 18, a lot of parents here don't give curfews anymore, yes, even when you're still living in their house. Basically, bring breakfast when you get home by morning, and don't do anything stupid. Now to the comments. I suppose there's a meaningful difference between be home at 2 a.m. and don't let 2 a.m. get here before you do. That is the single greatest way of phrasing any kind of expected arrival time. Well done. If I had a kid pull that on me, I'd at least know they were safe and sober enough to come up with a scheme like that. Every drunk at the bar knows that daylight savings time gets you an extra hour of drinking. That extra hour is a shit show. Did a similar thing once when organizing a party. A couple of friends and I would rent out the local youth center each year and throw a huge party. 250 people. The youth center's permit allowed us to stay open until 2 a.m. You can see where this is going, I suppose. We went on partying until 2:59, then ended it at 2 o'clock. It probably helped that our parties had a good reputation, even with the local cops. They stopped by earlier in the evening and they usually would also show up around closing. Except that one year we never figured out if they were simply busy elsewhere or if they were intentionally looking the other way. An anime convention I go to every year always falls on the weekend of daylight savings time ending. The 1 a.m. panel on Saturday night 2 hours long and it's glorious. Plus, it gives you an extra hour rest if you need it. I used to attend a sci-fi con that happens on the first weekend in March. Saturday night skips from 1:59 a.m. to 3 a.m., or 2 a.m. to 3:01 a.m. depending on who you ask. There's a panel that starts at 2:01 a.m. about time traveling every year. When you're young, you sneak out of home to go to parties. When you're old, you sneak out of parties to go home. Yes. I'm old and I just want to go home. Just reading this story about a party has knackered me out. Glad I'm already at home. But like, 2 a.m. curfew for a 16-17-year-olds is pretty reasonable, to be honest. No? Outstanding move. I really love the outstanding move meme. Outstanding meme. If my son came up with this, I wouldn't even be mad, lol. I'd probably just laugh my ass off. I am continually impressed by what my 4-year-old comes up with. Put on socks and pants. You need your legs to be covered on a cold tile floor. Comes downstairs in shorts and socks. I said pants, not shorts. But daddy, when I pull up my socks they connect to my shorts and cover my legs. God damn it. Time to let the natural consequences do their job. I did the exact same thing when I was a senior in high school. The only difference was that I had trained my parents to expect MC from me by that point. And the next morning they just asked, which 1:30 did you get home by? In the US, the clocks fall back at 2. Not 3. My high school girlfriend and I tried pulling this off. Her mother just grounded her for being a smartass. I didn't much like her mother. My buddy's mom screamed at him and grounded him for 6 months because she typed his phone number wrong into her shitty chat client and couldn't get in touch with him. I made it a point to bring that up around her. I helped them move one day, and I had to write down her phone number because I wasn't about to risk losing them with a ton of shit in my truck. Asked them if the number was right because I know you have trouble with phones. That was well a timed move, if I may say so. I'll see myself out. Go to timeout. English is not your native language? I wish I could write like that in any of my non-native languages. Lol, Redditors always say sorry, English is not my native language, then write out a full paragraph or two without any grammar mistakes. It's basically an unwritten rule at this point. And as of 18 you're legally an adult, so do whatever the hell you want. Should I tell him? There are differences between American and European youth. Only a third of Danish 18 to 24-year-olds live at home, for an example. There's also a difference between West and East Europe. I'm 24 and still live with my mom, and there's nothing bad about that. Plus, she never bothered with rules to begin with, so I never had a problem living at home, as opposed to how some teens are restricted on every turn and can't wait to hit legal age and move out. Had one such classmate. A 2 a.m. curfew is ducking awesome. Why do you have a problem with that? Because a lot of fun happens after 2 a.m. Are curfews a universal thing in the US? You might be foreign, but I know you're not African because my parents would have laid me out on the spot. Your English is great, BTW. All the Americans not believing this is hilarious. Well played. Technically right, the best kind of right. Every patron in my bar when I was a bartender would argue this point. The vice police didn't give a shit. Last call is 1:45 a.m., and bar has to be clear by 1:59, so the time change had no effect. I did this with daylight savings time and curfews when I was a teenager too. My parents weren't pleased, but once they accepted that I knew what I was doing, they eased up on curfews. My parents would be calling non-stop. What would your explanation have been if he called you at 2:30? Simple, you don't answer and claim that hour never existed and was part of an alternate reality where you were at a party during that time and not at home, which is obviously not this reality because you are having that conversation now.